A mysterious stone inscription reads, 40 feet below, £2 million are buried. This single cryptic message launched one of the world's most enduring and costly treasure hunts, a puzzle that has consumed lives and fortunes for more than 200 years. Off the coast of Nova Scotia lies a small, unassuming island that hides a secret far greater than its size. This is Oak Island, the site of a legendary treasure vault protected by a labyrinth of booby traps and flood tunnels. By the end of this story, you will understand every clue, theory, and heartbreaking failure that makes this the ultimate historical detective story. Who built such an elaborate system, and what could possibly be valuable enough to guard with such deadly ingenuity? What kind of treasure do you believe is worth risking everything for? The story truly ignited in 1795 with a simple observation. A teenager named Daniel McGinnis was exploring the island's heavily wooded interior when something unusual caught his eye. High in the branches of an old oak tree, a worn ship's pulley was dangling, a clear sign of human activity. But what was it doing there so far from the shore? His gaze then dropped to the ground beneath it, where he found an even more compelling clue. There was a distinct circular depression in the earth, about 13 feet in diameter, as if the ground had settled over a long-forgotten shaft. It looked entirely unnatural. Convinced he had found something significant, Daniel returned with two friends, John Smith and Anthony Vaughan. Armed with little more than shovels and youthful determination, they began to dig. Almost immediately, their efforts were rewarded. Just a few feet down, they hit a layer of flagstones that were not native to the island. Then, at a depth of 10 feet, their shovels struck not dirt, but a solid platform of oak logs firmly set into the walls of the shaft. They cleared the logs away and kept digging, their excitement growing with every scoop of earth. Astonishingly, at 20 feet down, they found another identical platform of oak logs. And at 30 feet, they found a third. This was no natural sinkhole. Someone had gone to incredible lengths to bury something deep within the earth, methodically sealing it every 10 feet. With each new platform, the whispers began. This was not just a hole, it was a structure, an engineered vault. The boys had unknowingly given it a name that would echo through history, the Money Pit. What could possibly be buried so deep that it required such meticulous, back-breaking effort to conceal? The legend was no longer just a rumor, it was taking physical shape, one oak platform at a time. The boys' discovery ignited a local frenzy, but their own efforts soon stalled. They simply lacked the resources to dig any deeper. For nearly a decade, the Money Pit sat silent, a tantalizing mystery just waiting for the next chapter. That chapter began in 1804 with the formation of the Unsolved Company, the first organized syndicate to take on the island's secret. They brought manpower, funding, and heavy equipment, determined to succeed where the teenagers had been forced to quit. They cleared the shaft back down to the 30-foot mark and then pushed on, their picks and shovels biting into the earth with a new professional intensity. They confirmed the pattern, finding another oak platform at 40 feet and then another at 50. The structure was real and it was deep. With every log they pried loose, their confidence grew. They were getting closer. Then, at around 90 feet, their tools struck something completely different. It was a large, flat stone, unlike any they had encountered before. This was no log platform. When they pulled it from the shaft, they saw it was inscribed with strange, cryptic symbols. Later, it would be called the 90-foot stone, and though its exact markings are now lost to history, some claimed it held a coded message, a final clue from the original builders. Buoyed by this incredible find, the crew dug with renewed vigor. They were now in uncharted territory, deeper than anyone had ever been. Just a few feet below the stone, at a depth of 93 feet, their shovels hit what felt like a solid wooden barrier. This was it, the treasure chest. They could feel it. Exhausted but elated, they decided to pause for the night and return in the morning to claim their prize. But when the sun rose, they were met with a scene of pure disbelief. The shaft, which they had left dry and clear, was now filled with salt water all the way up to the 33-foot level. They furiously began bailing, but the water level would not drop. It was as if they were trying to empty the ocean itself. That is when they made the terrifying discovery. They had not just found a treasure vault, they had triggered a booby trap of breathtaking ingenuity. While digging, they had punctured a secret flood tunnel. This wasn't a simple hole filling with groundwater. It was an engineered system, a channel deliberately designed to connect the base of the money pit directly to the ocean. The builders had not only buried their treasure deep, they had protected it with a self-destructive failsafe. Any attempt to breach the final chamber would activate the tunnel, allowing seawater to come rushing in, flooding the shaft and guarding the secret forever. In that moment, the Onslow Company realized they were not just digging for treasure. They were in a battle of wits against a long-vanished, brilliant, and ruthless mind. This was no longer a simple hole in the ground. It was a fortress. That stone slab became the single most important clue, and yet it vanished without a trace. Pulled from the muddy depths of the money pit, the so-called 90-foot stone was a tangible piece of the puzzle, a direct message from the builders themselves. Early accounts described it as a 2-foot-long rectangle of smooth slate, covered in strange, hand-chiseled symbols. It was not a language anyone recognized. This was a code. The stone was taken to a bookbinder's shop in Halifax, where a professor named James Leitch reportedly spent months studying the strange markings. His translation, the one that has fueled the legend for 2 centuries, was as tantalizing as it was direct. The symbols supposedly spelled out a clear and staggering message: 40 feet below, £2 million are buried. Think about that for a moment. If this translation was accurate, it meant the treasure was not even at the bottom of the pit. The frantic digging past the 90-foot mark had been a tragic misdirection. The real prize, an unimaginable fortune, was hidden in a separate chamber just 40 feet down, a clever decoy to fool any would-be treasure hunters. But here is where the mystery deepens into profound frustration. The stone itself, the one piece of physical proof, disappeared. Some say it was later built into a fireplace in a Halifax home, its inscriptions slowly blackened by soot and heat until they were illegible. Others claim it was used as a hearthstone, its markings worn away by generations of footsteps. The most heartbreaking theory is that it was simply lost, thrown away as worthless rubble during a move or a renovation. Without the original stone, everything rests on second-hand accounts and copies of the symbols, which themselves vary from source to source. This has led to a whirlwind of alternate translations. Another interpretation suggests the inscription was far more cryptic, reading, "He who owns this land owns the island." A different version even proposes it was a religious text. The stone's disappearance means we will likely never know the truth. Was it a literal treasure map, a philosophical statement, or an elaborate hoax carved by the original excavators themselves? This single piece of evidence, found and then lost, sits at the very heart of the Oak Island enigma, a ghost that continues to haunt every dig and every dream. The lost stone is not the only ghost haunting Oak Island. For generations, one of the most persistent and romantic theories has pointed a finger at a single infamous man, the pirate Captain William Kidd. This idea captures the imagination perfectly, the classic tale of a swashbuckler burying his ill-gotten gains in a secret location. The historical backdrop gives this theory some real weight. Captain Kidd was a real privateer who turned pirate, operating in the late 1600s and early 1700s. His name was synonymous with treasure, and he was known to have sailed the waters of the North Atlantic, not far from the coast of Nova Scotia. Legends of his buried loot stretch from the Caribbean to the New England coast, so why not Oak Island? The story goes that after a career of plunder, Kidd needed a secure place to hide his enormous wealth, a fortune in gold, silver, and jewels taken from merchant ships. He and his crew supposedly engineered the money pit as their personal bank vault, creating a deep, complex structure to safeguard their booty until they could return for it in peace. The flood tunnels in this version of the story are the ultimate pirate security system, a final trick to ensure that any interlopers would lose the treasure to the sea. But this is where the romantic theory begins to clash with the brutal reality of the island's engineering. The sheer complexity of the money pit presents a major problem. This was not a simple hole in the ground. The intricate system of oak platforms every 10 feet, the carefully engineered flood tunnels that required precise knowledge of hydraulics, the sheer manpower and time needed for such a project, all of it points to something far beyond the typical behavior of a pirate crew in a hurry. Pirates were famously impatient. Their goal was to acquire wealth and spend it. The common practice was to bury treasure in shallow, easily accessible pits, often on remote beaches, with the full intention of retrieving it within a few months or years. The idea that a crew of pirates would spend months, perhaps even years, laboring to construct such an elaborate and permanent underground fortress strains belief. It suggests a level of long-term planning and specialized engineering knowledge that a band of outlaws simply would not have possessed, so we are left with a compelling but contradictory image. Was Captain Kidd, or a pirate like him, capable of such a monumental and patient feat of construction? Or does the incredible sophistication of the money pit point to a different, even more mysterious architect, one with resources and motives far beyond simple greed? If pirates seem an unlikely architect for such an intricate vault, perhaps the true builder was not a swashbuckler but a scholar. One of the most intellectually compelling theories suggests the money pit does not guard gold or jewels, but something far more valuable to human history, the lost original manuscripts of William Shakespeare. The proponent of this idea is not a treasure hunter, but a man of philosophy, Sir Francis Bacon. For centuries, a fringe but persistent school of thought has argued that the simple actor from Stratford-upon-Avon, William Shakespeare, could not possibly have possessed the vast legal, classical, and courtly knowledge displayed in the plays. They point to Francis Bacon, a towering intellectual, scientist, and statesman of the Elizabethan era, as the true genius behind the pen name. According to this theory, Bacon, a known pioneer of ciphers and secret codes, hid his authorship to protect his political standing, embedding clues within the texts themselves. Believers in this Baconian theory scrutinize the plays for hidden messages, complex word ciphers that they claim point directly to Oak Island as a secret repository. They argue that the original handwritten plays, which would prove Bacon's authorship beyond doubt, were far too dangerous to keep in England. So a secret society, perhaps the Rosicrucians or an early form of the Freemasons, both of which Bacon was rumored to be connected to, engineered the ultimate safe. They crossed the Atlantic and constructed the money pit not as a bank, but as a time capsule, a library vault designed to preserve these priceless documents for a future generation that would understand their true significance. This would explain the need for such permanent, elaborate protection, flood tunnels to guard against decay and tampering for centuries. The reported Masonic or Rosicrucian symbols found on the island, like certain stone markings and geometric patterns, are seen not as pirate marks but as the calling cards of this secretive brotherhood. The treasure, in this light, is not monetary but monumental, a philosophical bombshell meant to rewrite history itself. The question then becomes not what is buried, but why it was considered so precious that it required an entire island to be engineered as its guardian. What kind of truth is so powerful that its keepers would go to such incredible lengths to hide it, yet also ensure it could one day be found? But if a literary secret seems too esoteric, another theory points to a treasure of immense and tangible wealth, one ripped directly from the pages of the French Revolution. As chaos engulfed Paris in the late 1700s, with the monarchy crumbling, loyalists faced a desperate race against time. Their mission to save the crown jewels and the royal treasury from the revolutionary mob. Could Oak Island be the ultimate result of that frantic escape, the final resting place of the lost fortune of King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette? This narrative weaves together historical fact and tantalizing possibility. We know that during the Revolution, there were several documented attempts to smuggle the royal family's wealth out of France. The French Navy, still largely loyal to the crown, had the means and the maritime expertise to execute such a daring operation. The coast of Nova Scotia was not unfamiliar territory. France had contested it with Britain for decades. It is plausible that a French naval vessel, crewed by military engineers, could have made the transatlantic journey with a priceless cargo. This theory provides a compelling explanation for the money pit's most baffling feature, its sophisticated engineering. Who else but military engineers would possess the knowledge to design such an elaborate system of flood tunnels and booby traps? This was not the work of pirates or a secret society of philosophers. It was the work of professionals, men trained in fortification and siege works, applying their skills to create a permanent, impregnable vault. The flood defenses mirror the kind of hydrological engineering used in European military architecture. They were not just hiding the treasure, they were fortifying it against any possible recovery attempt by their enemies. The timeline fits hauntingly well. The revolution reached its peak in the 1790s, the same decade Daniel Magines first spotted the mysterious depression on Oak Island. The French engineers, having buried the treasure and activated their deadly security system, would have had little choice but to leave it behind, perhaps hoping to return after the monarchy was restored. But with the king and queen executed and the revolutionaries consolidating power, that return never happened. The secret died with them, leaving behind only an empty shaft, a series of cryptic clues, and a legacy of seawater guarding a fortune that may have once adorned the Palace of Versailles. Perhaps the most breathtaking theory of all suggests that Oak Island does not hold mere gold or manuscripts, but a relic of divine power. Some researchers passionately argue that the money pit is the final hiding place of the biblical Ark of the Covenant. This is the ultimate treasure hunt, one that spans millennia and continents. The Ark, according to the Old Testament, was a gold-covered chest containing the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments. It was the most sacred object of the ancient Israelites, believed to house the very presence of God. But its historical trail goes cold after the destruction of Jerusalem's first temple, leaving its fate one of the world's greatest unsolved mysteries. How could such an object possibly end up on a small island in Canada? The connection is made through a shadowy and powerful medieval order, the Knights Templar. This theory posits that during the Crusades, the Templars discovered the Ark hidden beneath the ruins of Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem. Recognizing its immense spiritual and political power, they secretly transported it back to Europe. But when the order was brutally suppressed in the 14th century, a fleet of Templar ships laden with their greatest treasures allegedly escaped, vanishing from historical records. Proponents of this idea believe those ships sailed across the Atlantic, following pre-Columbian maps, to a new world where they could protect their sacred charge forever. This would explain the incredible effort behind the money pit. What project could be more worthy of such monumental engineering than safeguarding the most holy relic in human history? The builders were not pirates or royalists, but devout knights on a divine mission. The island itself is sometimes cited as evidence, with its strange, triangular swamp and certain stone formations said to mirror sacred geometries or constellations significant to the Templars. Could the entire landscape be a vast, coded map pointing to the Ark's resting place? The flood tunnels then take on a new meaning, not just as a booby trap, but as a symbolic moat, a barrier of water protecting a holy of holies. This theory forces us to ask a profound question. If the treasure is not wealth but faith, what does that mean for every shovel that has bitten into the island's soil? The search is no longer for fortune, but for a confirmation of one of history's most enduring legends, a quest that would rewrite not just the history of an island, but the spiritual history of the world. The search for Oak Island's treasure has always been a gamble, but for one family, the price would be everything. By the 1960s, the legend had drawn a new kind of seeker, not a wealthy syndicate, but a true believer willing to stake his entire life on the mystery. Robert Ristall was a former motorcycle daredevil who arrived on the island with his wife and their 3 children, pouring all of their savings into a single-minded quest. For 5 long years, they lived in a small shack, fighting the elements and the island's stubborn secrets, convinced they were on the verge of a breakthrough. Robert, alongside his 18-year-old son, Bobby, worked tirelessly, focusing on a new shaft near the infamous money pit. On one sweltering August afternoon, the work seemed routine. Robert was down in the shaft, perhaps inspecting a pump or clearing debris, when he was suddenly overcome by invisible fumes. The cause was likely hydrogen sulfide, a poisonous gas that can accumulate in deep, confined spaces, a silent killer with the scent of rotten eggs. Bobby, seeing his father collapse, did not hesitate. He scrambled down the ladder to save him. He, too, was instantly overwhelmed. 2 other men, Cyril Hiltz and Andy DeMont, followed in a desperate rescue attempt, and they also succumbed to the toxic air. In a matter of minutes, 4 lives were extinguished. The island's deadly defense system had claimed its most devastating toll, not with a rush of water, but with a breath of poisoned air. The tragedy shattered the Ristall family and cast a long, dark shadow over the entire endeavor. This was no longer just an adventurous puzzle. It was a place where obsession could lead to utter devastation, a stark reminder that some secrets are guarded not just by engineering but by fate itself. For decades, the island's tragedies and failures seemed to have sealed its fate as a cursed place. But the mystery refused to die, finding its way into the hands of 2 brothers from Michigan who would change everything. Rick and Marty Lagina first encountered the legend as boys, captivated by a Reader's Digest article that detailed the money pit and its unsolved secrets. That spark of childhood wonder never faded, growing into a lifelong dream. In 2007, they turned that dream into reality, purchasing a controlling interest in Oak Island and launching the most comprehensive, technologically advanced search the island had ever seen. Their quest became the foundation of the History Channel series, The Curse of Oak Island, transforming a private obsession into a global phenomenon. Suddenly, millions of viewers were watching every week as the brothers brought in ground-penetrating radar, sophisticated drilling rigs, and teams of historians and engineers. This was no longer the work of men with just shovels and hope. They were systematically scanning the very bones of the island, searching for anomalies that previous generations could only guess were there. The show did more than just document the dig. It introduced the world to the human side of the hunt, the brotherly debates, the rising hopes with every intriguing artifact pulled from the mud, and the crushing disappointments when a promising shaft led to another dead end. Rick, the eternal romantic, feels the weight of the history and the generations of seekers who came before him. Marty, the pragmatic engineer, constantly questions the cost and the logic, demanding evidence that lives up to the legend. Together, they embody the 2 sides of this centuries-old conflict, the heart and the head, both drawn inexorably into the same alluring trap. Their work has unearthed tantalizing new clues, from ancient Roman swords to bits of parchment and human-made stone platforms far older than the first settlers. Each fragment is a piece of a puzzle that grows more complex with every passing season. The Lagina brothers have not solved the mystery, but they have given it a new life, proving that the greatest treasure of Oak Island may not be gold, but the relentless, undying power of a question. What will they, or anyone who follows, finally uncover in that stubborn, waterlogged ground? The Lagina brothers may be the public face of the modern search, but they are far from alone in their obsession. They are supported by a dedicated team, each member bringing a unique and essential skill to this monumental task. Craig Tester, Marty's college friend and business partner, serves as the project's financial and logistical anchor. While Rick dreams of history and Marty analyzes the engineering, Craig is the one who manages the staggering costs and complex operations, ensuring that the search can continue month after month, year after year. He is the sober voice of practicality in a venture defined by its wild improbabilities. Then there is Jack Begley, a younger member of the team whose unbridled enthusiasm is infectious. Jack represents the next generation of treasure hunters, the wide-eyed believer who is willing to get his hands dirty in the mud and muck, his optimism never seeming to dim even after countless empty holes and dead ends. His energy is a vital counterbalance to the weight of decades of failure, but perhaps the most pivotal figure in the modern story is the late Dan Blankenship. Dan was a living legend, a man who had already spent over 50 years searching the island long before the Laginas ever arrived. He first came to Oak Island in the 1960s, and like so many before him, he intended to stay for only a season. The island had other plans. He lost his partnership, his money, and nearly his life in a terrible fall, yet he never left. Dan became the human bridge between the past and present, a repository of institutional knowledge. He had his own theories, his own maps, and his own stubborn conviction that he was just one more shovel load away from the truth. His partnership with Rick and Marty was more than just a business arrangement, it was a passing of the torch. When Dan spoke, he was not just sharing an opinion, he was channeling the whispers of every seeker who had stood on that ground since Daniel Magini's. His presence on the island was a constant reminder that this was not just a television show. It was a legacy, a multi-generational quest that had consumed lives, built friendships, and broken hearts. This diverse team, the dreamer, the engineer, the pragmatist, the enthusiast, and the sage, embodies the many faces of the Oak Island mystery itself. Together, they form a single unit, driven by a shared, relentless question that Dan Blankenship spent half a century trying to answer. What secret is so powerful that it can bind people together for a lifetime and beyond? For all the tragic romance of shovels and dreams, the modern hunt for Oak Island's secret has become a battle of silicon and data. The Lagina brothers and their team have embraced a suite of geophysical tools that allow them to see into the earth itself, rendering the island's soil almost transparent. Ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, has been one of their most powerful allies. Think of it as a form of subterranean echolocation. The device sends high-frequency radio pulses down into the ground, and these pulses bounce back whenever they hit a change in density, a void, or a different type of material. A computer then translates these returning signals into a detailed cross-sectional image, a slice of the earth that reveals what lies beneath without a single shovel breaking ground. This technology has painted a startling new picture of Oak Island. It has revealed a labyrinth of anomalies deep below the surface, strange voids and tunnels that weave through the bedrock like the roots of some colossal man-made tree. In one particularly compelling survey, the radar detected what appears to be a large, rectangular chamber at a depth of over 160 feet, a space far too geometrically perfect to be a natural formation. Another scan pinpointed the path of the infamous flood tunnel system, tracing its course from Smith's Cove directly toward the heart of the money pit. But GPR is just one tool in a high-tech arsenal. The team has also employed seismic tomography, a technique that works like a CT scan for the planet. They plant sensors across the island and then send shockwaves through the ground, often by striking the earth with a heavy weight. These sound waves travel at different speeds through solid rock, loose backfill, or empty spaces. By measuring how long it takes for the vibrations to reach the sensors, powerful computers can construct a stunningly detailed three-dimensional map of the island's entire subterranean structure. This is how they discovered massive, unexplained voids and what seemed to be vertical shafts running parallel to the original money pit. suggesting the entire area is not a single hole but a complex multi-shaft network. These technological eyes have stripped away centuries of mud and mystery, revealing that the legends were not exaggerations. The evidence now suggests an engineering project of staggering scale, a hidden underground fortress whose full complexity we are only just beginning to comprehend. The ghosts of the past are no longer just stories, they are shapes on a screen waiting to be uncovered. While the money pit commands most of the attention, a far stranger mystery lies just a short walk away in a murky, triangular bog. This is the Oak Island Swamp, a place long dismissed as a simple wetland, but which has now revealed itself as one of the island's most carefully engineered secrets. The first clue was its shape, a near-perfect triangle that defies the chaotic forms of natural swamps. Even more telling, core samples drilled deep into its muddy bottom hit not the expected bedrock, but a thick, uniform layer of rounded stones and a substance called coconut fiber. This was not a natural soil profile. Coconut fiber, which does not grow anywhere near Nova Scotia, had to have been brought to the island by the shipload, deliberately laid down as a kind of ancient geotextile fabric. This fiber, along with the stone layer, acted as a waterproof membrane, transforming the area into a controlled, water-filled basin. The staggering implication is that the swamp is not a swamp at all, but a massive man-made reservoir, likely used as a sheltered cove or a dry dock for ship repair. Imagine the effort, centuries ago, of hauling countless tons of stone and imported plant material to create an artificial lagoon in the island's interior. This was not a small project, it was a monumental feat of landscape engineering. The purpose seems clear: to create a hidden, secure harbor where ships could be unloaded or repaired away from the prying eyes of the open ocean. The artifacts pulled from this manufactured muck are even more baffling. Divers sifting through the peat have recovered objects that shatter conventional timelines, including a decorated Roman ceremonial sword. How could a weapon from the ancient Roman Empire possibly find its way into a man-made bog on a Canadian island, a continent that Romans were not supposed to have known existed? Alongside it, they found what appeared to be a piece of a leather book binding, complete with a thong tie, a fragile relic that somehow survived centuries in the acidic water. These are not the trinkets of 18th century pirates or French sailors. They point to a much older, more mysterious presence, suggesting that Oak Island's story may stretch back not just centuries but millennia. The swamp forces us to reconsider everything. Was this artificial basin the true heart of the operation? A construction site for an endeavor so vast and secretive that its architects needed to reshape the very land itself, and in doing so, did they leave behind fragments of a history we are only now beginning to piece together? Even the trees seem to hold their breath around Nolan's cross. Scattered across the island's high ground, 5 massive, glacially deposited boulders form a perfect geometric pattern, a cross that spans over 800 feet from arm to arm. This is not a structure you can appreciate from the ground. Its scale is so immense that its shape only becomes clear from the air, a secret message written in stone for the sky to read. The discovery was made by a man named Fred Nolan, a surveyor and long-time treasure hunter who, after a bitter feud with other searchers, was mapping his own section of the island. Using his professional tools, he meticulously plotted the positions of these seemingly random erratics and was stunned to find they aligned with astonishing precision. 2 stones mark the arms, 2 more form the foot, and a single, massive boulder sits at the head position. This is not a typical Christian cross, however. The proportions are unique, and at its very center, directly over the heart of the formation, lies a 6th stone, a smooth, triangular slab known as the money stone. This central stone is carved with strange, cryptic symbols and a single, clear arrow pointing downward. The implication is staggering. The entire cross may be a giant map, and its heart marks the spot. The theory that has captured the imagination of many is that this is a Templar marker, Proponents point to the geometry, arguing the cross's specific dimensions and angles mirror those found in Templar chapels and sacred sites across Europe. For a clandestine order of knights transporting a sacred relic, what better way to mark its final resting place than with a monumental, hidden sign, one that could only be understood by those initiated into its meaning? They did not need to leave a written map that could be stolen or decay. They left the land itself as their guide, yet a fierce debate rages over the very nature of the cross. Skeptics, often geologists, argue that this is a classic example of apophenia, the human tendency to see patterns in random noise. They point out that Oak Island is littered with thousands of glacial erratics left behind by retreating ice sheets over 10,000 years ago. With so many stones, is it not statistically probable that 5 of them could, by pure chance, align in a rough cross shape? They see not an engineered layout, but a classic Rorschach test, a pattern projected onto nature by generations of hopeful seekers. But the counter-argument is compelling. The precision of the alignment, the specific placement of the central money stone with its man-made carvings, and the sheer mathematical probability of such a perfect formation occurring naturally seem to defy simple chance. The central stone's arrow feels like an intentional, undeniable signal, so we are left with a choice between 2 equally profound possibilities. Either we are looking at one of the most incredible coincidences in the natural world, a random act of geology that just happens to mimic a sacred symbol directly over the world's most famous treasure shaft, or we are witnessing the ghost of a blueprint, a deliberate signature left by architects who wanted their work to be found, but only by those who knew how to see. The swamp's secrets are not buried deep, but lie half submerged in its murky waters. While exploring the edges of this artificial bog, the team uncovered a structure so deliberate it defied any natural explanation, a perfectly fitted stone pathway that seemed to lead directly into the heart of the swamp itself. It was promptly nicknamed the Hatch. This was not a pile of rubble, but a carefully constructed corridor of flat, interlocking stones, creating a solid walkway or ramp that descended beneath the peat and water. Its purpose seems chillingly clear. It was an entrance, a formal access point designed to guide someone or something from the dry land into the depths of the manufactured lagoon. Was this how the builders moved their equipment or their treasure from a hidden dock to the island's interior, a secret road now swallowed by the mire? The Hatch suggests the swamp was not just a static reservoir, but an active, organized worksite, a hub of frantic activity now frozen in time. Nearby, another ghost appeared on a sonar screen. As a boat slowly navigated the swamp, its underwater sonar pinged back the image of a massive, U-shaped structure resting on the bottom. The scan revealed a series of perfectly aligned wooden posts driven deep into the sediment, forming a broad, open-ended enclosure that faced toward the hatch. The shape and scale are unmistakably functional. Some researchers believe this is the skeleton of an ancient wharf, a place where ships could be tied up and unloaded in secret, protected from the rough seas of the open coast. The cargo, once brought ashore, could then be transported via the stone hatch further inland. Others see it not as a dock, but as a construction platform, a cofferdam used to hold back water while the builders worked on another project, perhaps even the entrance to a separate tunnel system. This theory is perhaps the most electrifying, the idea that the U-shaped structure and the stone hatch are not the end of the journey, but the beginning. They could mark the gateway to an entirely separate underground complex, a network of chambers that bypasses the booby-trapped money pit entirely. Imagine a team moving priceless goods from a ship onto the wharf, down the stone pathway, and into a secure, dry tunnel that leads to a different, even more cleverly hidden vault. This would mean that for over 2 centuries, treasure hunters may have been focused on the decoy, the brilliantly designed trap of the money pit, while the real prize lay just a few hundred feet away, silently guarded by a sunken wharf and a stone road leading into the mud. The swamp, once dismissed as a curiosity, now stands as a rival to the money pit itself, a place where the very water seems to whisper that the greatest secrets are still hiding in plain sight. The mud of the swamp held more than just stones and coconut fiber. In a moment that sent shockwaves through the team, a metal detector screamed over a seemingly unremarkable patch of muck, leading to the recovery of a small, heavy object. After careful cleaning, it revealed itself as a hand-wrought cross made of solid lead. This was not a piece of modern junk, it was an artifact of immense age, its surface pitted and its shape slightly irregular, clearly forged by a blacksmith centuries ago. Scientific analysis confirmed its staggering age, dating the metal to a period between the 13th and 15th centuries, long before any official European settlement in the region. This single find, a personal object of faith, became one of the most powerful pieces of evidence ever pulled from the island. Its very existence points directly to a European presence on Oak Island long before Christopher Columbus ever set sail. But who did it belong to? The connection to the Knights Templar is immediate and compelling. The cross is a pate style with arms that flare out gracefully, a design famously associated with the medieval order. Could this cross have been lost by a Templar knight, a member of that secretive fleet said to have carried their treasures across the ocean? It is a tangible, physical link to the very individuals at the heart of one of the grandest theories. Yet, skeptics offer a more conventional explanation, suggesting it could have been dropped by a Spanish missionary centuries later. But this theory struggles against the timeline. The cross's metal composition and craftsmanship are consistent with a much earlier medieval period, and its location, buried deep in the sediment of a man-made swamp, suggests it was lost during the island's original period of intense activity, not a casual later visit. This small, heavy cross carries the weight of a profound historical possibility. It is not a coin or a tool that could be traded, but a deeply personal item, an object of devotion. Its loss would have been significant to its owner, a quiet tragedy in the midst of a monumental undertaking. Finding it in the swamp, the very epicenter of the island's engineering, feels like recovering a single thread from a vast, invisible tapestry. It is a silent witness, a clue that does not point to a treasure of gold, but to the people who may have built this entire mysterious complex. This lead cross asks us a simple, haunting question. If it was not left by the Templars, then who were these early Christians, these master engineers who arrived on these shores hundreds of years before history says they should have? And what were they doing on Oak Island that was so important they would leave a piece of their faith behind in the mud? The swamp's secrets were profound, but they paled next to the sheer, heart-stopping drama of a different discovery. In the 1970s, Blankenship, driven by a solitary obsession, directed all his efforts toward a new shaft drilled northeast of the original money pit. This was Borehole 10X, a narrow, steel-cased tube driven deep into the island's bedrock. When the drill bit finally punched through at over 200 feet, it did not hit solid stone. It dropped into a vast, water-filled cavity, an underground cavern that no one had ever suspected. Dan, refusing to rely on drill samples alone, decided to see this hidden chamber for himself. He lowered a waterproof camera into the murky, frigid water, its powerful lights piercing the darkness for the first time in centuries. The grainy, black and white footage that came back was the stuff of both legend and nightmare. The camera reportedly drifted through the open space, its lights illuminating what appeared to be severed wooden chests, old tools, and even a human hand, pale and floating in the abyss. It was a ghostly tableau, a frozen moment from a centuries-old crime scene or a forgotten storage room. The physical evidence seemed to back the incredible claim. The drill core brought up from the cavern contained tangible proof, wood fragments, pieces of metal, and even a type of cement that was not native to the area. For Blankenship, this was the ultimate validation, the visual proof he had spent his life searching for. But the story of 10X is shrouded in as much controversy as it is in mystery. The cavern was impossibly unstable, its walls constantly threatening to collapse, making a direct recovery mission lethally dangerous. Later attempts to refilm the chamber yielded only murky, inconclusive images, the chests and the haunting hand never seen again with the same clarity. Skeptics argue the original footage was a trick of the light and shadow, that the human brain, desperate for pattern, can see faces and forms in the most random shapes. They suggest the wood and metal were simply debris that had fallen into the hole from higher levels over the years. Yet, for those who believe, the images from 10X remain the most chilling and personal evidence ever captured. They are not just objects but a story, a snapshot of a tragedy. Was this the final vault, its contents scattered by a long-ago cave-in that also trapped one of its builders? Or was it a deliberate deception, an elaborate hoax designed to torment a generation of seekers? The cavern of Borehole 10X stands as a silent, flooded tomb, its truth as murky as the water that fills it, a promise of answers that remains forever just out of reach. The chaos of 2 centuries lies between the modern searchers and the original discovery. Generations of treasure hunters have torn the ground apart, sinking dozens of shafts that collapsed into one another, backfilling failed excavations with tons of rubble and mud. The result is a nightmarish jigsaw puzzle underground, a chaotic mess where the true money pit, the one first seen by Daniel Magines, is buried not just by nature, but by the frantic efforts of those who came before. Finding that single, original shaft is the foundational quest, the key that unlocks every other theory. Without it, every drill and every dig is just a guess in the dark. The Lagina brothers and their team turn to the ghosts of maps past, carefully overlaying historical charts from the Onsolved Company, the Truro Syndicate, and Fred Nolan himself. Each map was a snapshot of a different era, a different interpretation of the truth, often contradicting the others. By triangulating these faded lines and handwritten notes, they began to trace a ghostly outline, a consensus location for where the story truly began. But paper is not enough. To confirm what the maps suggested, they turned to the earth itself with a methodical campaign of core drilling. This is not the dramatic sinking of a giant shaft, but a patient, surgical investigation. A massive drill rig bores deep into the ground, extracting long, slender cylinders of earth, a timeline of everything that has happened below. The team analyzes these cores like forensic scientists, looking for the telltale signs of human activity. A layer of wood chips might mark an old platform. A section of blue clay could be the sealant used by the original builders. A pocket of loose, mixed gravel signals the backfill of a collapsed tunnel. Each core sample is a sentence in a story written in soil and stone. When they find a sequence that matches the historical descriptions, oak at 10-foot intervals, then a layer of charcoal, then a void, it sends a jolt of electricity through the entire operation. This painstaking, unglamorous work is the unshakable foundation of the entire modern search. To find the treasure, they must first find the hole, and to find the hole, they must sift through the shattered legacy of every dreamer who tried and failed. A single coin dropped in the mud and forgotten can speak more clearly than 1,000 legends. Scattered across Oak Island, these small, metallic echoes of the past are forming a crucial timeline of human presence. One of the most telling finds is a Spanish 8 maravedis coin, minted in the 1600s. This was not a high-value piece of treasure, but common currency, the kind carried by a sailor or a laborer for daily purchases. Its very mundanity is what makes it so significant. It was lost not by a wealthy nobleman overseeing a treasure's burial, but by an ordinary person going about their work. Then there is the British halfpenny from the 1700s, a coin that circulated widely throughout the American colonies. These 2 coins, along with a handful of others from similar periods, act as historical breadcrumbs. They prove that people were actively present on Oak Island, handling money and likely conducting business for at least a century, and possibly much longer, before Daniel Magines ever saw that strange depression in 1795. This is not about a single, secretive visit. The coins suggest repeated activity, a sustained human effort that spanned generations. Think of it like finding a modern quarter and a 50-year-old dime on a piece of vacant land. You would instantly know that people have been coming and going there for decades, even if no buildings remain. These coins are the hard evidence that the legend is built upon a foundation of real, long-term history. They transform Oak Island from a site of a hypothetical event into a place of documented, ongoing work. Who were these people spending Spanish and British currency on this remote island? And what were they buying or paying for that was important enough to keep them coming back for over 100 years? The money itself is not the treasure, but it is the key that is beginning to unlock the true story of when and for how long this mysterious project was truly underway. Perhaps the money pit was never the true destination, but merely the decoy. While generations focused on that deep, flooding shaft, another mystery was quietly emerging on the opposite side of the island at a place called Smith's Cove. Here, the evidence suggests a completely different kind of operation, one not of burial but of salvage. The theory is as logical as it is revolutionary. What if a treasure-laden ship, perhaps a Spanish galleon or a French naval vessel, was wrecked just off the island's coast? Its crew, stranded but determined to save their cargo, would have faced an immense challenge. How do you retrieve tons of heavy, waterlogged treasure from a sunken hull? Their solution, according to this idea, was to build an elaborate recovery system right on the beach, and the clues they left behind are breathtaking. The first major discovery came when early treasure hunters, baffled by the constant flooding, decided to excavate the beach at Smith's Cove. Just a few feet beneath the sand, they uncovered a structure that defied all natural explanation. It was a network of channels perfectly constructed from smooth, hand-sized stones. These were the finger drains, so named because they branched out from a main channel like the fingers on a hand. Each drain was meticulously lined with a layer of coconut fiber, acting as a natural filter to prevent sand from clogging the system. All of these small channels fed into a much larger conduit, a massive box drain constructed from heavy timber. This was not a random collection of driftwood. This was sophisticated hydrological engineering, a system designed to gather seawater from the beach and channel it inland with incredible efficiency. But why would anyone build a system to collect seawater and send it toward the center of the island? This is the core of the shipwreck salvage theory. The builders may have used the power of the ocean itself as their tool. They could have constructed a cofferdam, a temporary watertight enclosure around the wreck site. Then they would have used a giant water wheel or a series of hand-powered pumps, driven by the very water channeled from Smith's Cove, to continuously drain the enclosure, allowing them to work on the sunken ship in the dry. The treasure, once recovered, would have been moved inland for temporary storage. The so-called money pit in this scenario might have started as a simple storage vault or a processing station, its infamous flood tunnels originally serving as discharge channels for the massive pumping operation. When the salvage work was done, the system was simply left in place, and over time its purpose was forgotten. The drainage network eventually clogged, and centuries later, when the Onsolved company broke into one of those old discharge tunnels, they unintentionally reconnected it to the sea, creating the legendary booby trap. This theory turns the entire Oak Island narrative on its head. It suggests the real treasure was not something brought to the island to be hidden, but something taken from the sea and brought ashore. The incredible engineering at Smith's Cove was not a defense mechanism, but a tool of recovery, a ghost of a monumental effort to cheat the ocean of its prize. Away from the flooded shafts and deep drilling, a different kind of treasure hunt has been unfolding right under their feet. Metal detectors have swept across the island's surface, their electronic chirps and wails revealing a hidden layer of history that the deep earth has kept secret. These are not the massive chests of gold from legend, but something arguably more personal, more human. The soil has yielded delicate brass brooches, their intricate filigree work still visible after centuries of tarnish. It has given up rings, their bands bent and stones missing, lost by hands that once worked or walked there. In one particularly stunning moment, the detector screamed over a small, ornate object. Brushing away the dirt revealed a gemstone brooch, its central stone a deep, captivating color, set in a metal frame of clear craftsmanship. This was no common laborer's button. An item of such beauty and value speaks of wealth, of status, of someone who valued adornment and presentation. Finding it on this remote island is profoundly telling. It suggests that the people here were not just a transient crew of diggers. A simple construction gang would not have included individuals wearing fine jewelry. This brooch, along with the other personal items, points toward the presence of a settlement, or at the very least, the sustained presence of people of high social standing. Think of a military officer overseeing a critical engineering project, or a nobleman guarding a royal secret. These small, lost objects paint a portrait of a community, however temporary, living and working on Oak Island. They lost coins, they lost rings, they lost the pins that held their clothes together. Each find is a whisper from a past that was far more organized and socially stratified than anyone ever assumed. Who was the person who owned that gemstone brooch, and what was their role in the grand, mysterious operation that consumed this island so long ago? The year 1307 marked a cataclysm for one of the most powerful organizations in the medieval world. On Friday, October the 13th, King Philip IV of France, desperate to erase his enormous debts, ordered the simultaneous arrest of every Knights Templar in his kingdom. The charges were heresy and blasphemy, a calculated smear campaign against the pious warrior monks who had become the de facto bankers of Europe. In the ensuing persecution, many Templars were tortured and executed, their vast wealth and properties seized. But according to legend, not all of the order's treasures fell into the king's hands. A fleet of Templar ships, laden with their most sacred relics and immense fortunes, is said to have sailed from the French port of La Rochelle, vanishing into the Atlantic mists, never to be seen again in European waters. This is the ghost fleet that many believe found its way to the New World, to a remote island that would one day be called Oak Island. The theory posits that these fugitive knights, possessing unparalleled knowledge gleaned from their time in the Holy Land, engineered the money pit not as a temporary hiding place but as a permanent reliquary. Their goal was not to retrieve wealth but to protect it for all time, to safeguard objects of such profound spiritual power that their very existence could alter the balance of faith and empire. The architectural evidence on the island seems to whisper their name. Consider the sheer complexity of the flood tunnel system, a feat of hydrological engineering that mirrors the advanced water management techniques the Templars would have witnessed and perhaps even employed in the Middle East. This was not the work of amateurs, it was the work of military engineers with a global perspective. Then there is Nolan's Cross, that immense geometric formation of glacial boulders. To a skeptic, it is a random act of nature, but to a believer, its proportions and alignment are a direct echo of the sacred geometry found in Templar chapels across Europe, like the famous Rotunda at their headquarters in Toma, Portugal. The cross is not just a marker, it is a statement of faith and ownership, a colossal signature written across the landscape, visible only to those who understand its language. The lead cross found in the swamp, dated to the very centuries when the Templars were at their peak, is perhaps the most intimate piece of this puzzle. It is not a treasure, it is a personal possession, a touchstone of faith lost by one of these devout warriors during the grueling work of construction. How else could such an artifact from a time before Columbus find its way deep into the sediment of a man-made bog in Nova Scotia? Every clue converges on a single, breathtaking narrative. The suppression of the order provided the motive for a desperate transatlantic exodus. Their rumored fleet provided the means. Their association with holy relics like the Ark of the Covenant provides the ultimate reason for such an elaborate, permanent, and zealously guarded vault. Oak Island, in this light, becomes the Templars' last sanctuary, a new world fortress built to protect a secret so powerful it was worth crossing an ocean to bury. But treasure is not the only thing buried on Oak Island. Alongside the shovels and dreams lies a tangled web of legal claims and courtroom battles that have ensnared nearly every person who has tried to solve the mystery. For over a century, the true curse of Oak Island has been as much about property law as it is about pirate ghosts. The core of the conflict is a simple, brutal question. If you find a treasure, who does it actually belong to? The answer is a labyrinth of deeds, licenses, and bitter disputes. The most famous of these feuds was between Fred Nolan and Dan Blankenship, two titans of the search who became locked in a cold war over a tiny patch of land. For years, they operated in isolated camps, divided by a literal line in the sand, each convinced the other was digging in the wrong place and neither willing to share a single clue. Their conflict was a microcosm of the larger struggle, a fight over a treasure trove license, a special government permit that grants the holder the exclusive right to search for and keep treasure on a specific piece of land. Securing and defending this license has consumed fortunes and broken partnerships, turning allies into adversaries in a paper war fought with lawyers and land surveys. This legal quagmire has halted excavations for years at a time, proving that the island's defenses are not just physical but bureaucratic. The flood tunnels can be pumped out, but a court injunction can stop a search dead in its tracks, sometimes forever. And then there is the other curse, the one whispered around campfires. The legend says that 7 men must die before the Oak Island treasure can be found. It is a piece of folklore that took on a horrifying, literal meaning with the Restall tragedy, which claimed 4 lives in a single day. That disaster brought the death toll to 6, a number that hung over the island for decades like a dark omen. Every seeker who came after was acutely aware that, according to the prophecy, only one more life stood between them and the answer. This superstition adds a layer of profound psychological weight to the hunt. Is the island truly guarding itself with a supernatural price, or is the so-called curse merely a way to rationalize the very real, mortal dangers of digging deep pits in unstable ground, of confronting toxic gases and collapsing tunnels? The legal battles and the ancient curse represent 2 sides of the same coin. One is a man-made maze of greed and possession, the other a primal story of sacrifice and fate. Together, they form an impenetrable barrier, ensuring that the cost of the treasure is always measured in more than just money. The ground itself seems to tremble under the weight of modern ambition. This is no longer a quiet hunt with shovels and hope. It is a full-scale industrial siege known as the Big Dig. At its heart is a brutal piece of technology called the slam can, a massive, hollow steel tube that is pounded relentlessly into the earth over and over like a piston driven by pure force. With each thunderous slam, it bites deeper, shearing through layers of history, mud, and shattered timbers from past excavations. When it is finally hauled back to the surface, it brings with it a sealed core sample, a pristine time capsule of everything that lies at a specific depth. This violent, precise process allows the team to literally grab a handful of the deep target zone, pulling up material that has been untouched for centuries, all while the surrounding shaft is held secure. But the slam can is just the probe, the way to confirm what is down there. The true masterstroke of this operation is the installation of the caissons. These are not simple pipes, they are colossal interlocking rings of steel, each one wider than a man is tall. One by one, they are driven into the bedrock, creating a massive, watertight cylinder that sinks right through the chaos of collapsed shafts and flood tunnels. Imagine building a fortress wall straight down, pushing back the entire ocean and 200 years of watery failure. This steel sleeve is their ultimate weapon against the island's oldest defense. For the first time since the Onslow Company heard that terrifying rush of seawater, someone is building a permanent dry space at the very bottom of the mystery. Every turn of the drill, every slam of the can, every section of caisson lowered into the earth represents the culmination of every single effort that came before. This is the final, definitive push, a direct challenge to the original engineers. The Lagina brothers are not just digging another hole, they are constructing a monument to persistence, a steel and concrete question demanding a final answer from the depths. 2 centuries of digging have yielded more questions than answers, yet the hunt continues with undiminished passion. From the first discovery of that strange pulley and the circular depression, to the heartbreaking tragedies and the high-tech scans revealing ghostly chambers deep in the bedrock, the story of Oak Island is a testament to something far greater than greed. It is a chronicle of the human spirit, a saga of obsession that has consumed generations of dreamers, engineers, and explorers, all united by a single, unanswerable question. The true treasure of Oak Island may not be a chest of gold or a sacred relic waiting in the dark. It may be the journey itself, the relentless, costly, and magnificent pursuit of a mystery that refuses to die. The island's greatest gift has been the community it has built, the stories it has inspired, and the undeniable proof that wonder is a force powerful enough to change the course of human lives. So we turn this final question over to you. After following this incredible journey, what do you truly believe lies buried in the money pit? Is it the lost fortune of a French king, the priceless manuscripts of a secret genius, or the divine power of a biblical artifact? Or is the real treasure the simple, enduring mystery that keeps us all searching, dreaming, and looking toward the next discovery? Share your theories in the comments below and subscribe to stay connected as this centuries-old story continues to unfold.